There are quite a few places around the world one hardly has a chance to access. For example, the bottom of the Mariana Trench or the crater of the Tambora volcano. But there are still more of these places to be found in the space. One of them is the vicinity of the remote planet Neptune. This celestial body is 4.5 billion kilometers away from us. To get there by an ordinary rocket would take us about 20 years. However, there was something from the Earth that was able to approach this planet and even take a few photos of it. Cosmo, the first in outer space. This was the famous Voyager 2 probe, which still remains the only apparatus to have flown by Neptune. Voyager 2 spent just a few months near the planet, but even in that short time span, it was able to get a great amount of valuable information. Neptune was the last big object to be seen by Voyager 2 before the probe entered the heliopore's boundaries and came into interstellar space. But what did the last shots from Neptune look like? Before you find out what it was, let's look at the probe's history. August the 20th, 1977. This is the day when Voyager 2 left the surface of the Earth. 41 years later, it was to go beyond the boundaries of the entire solar system. Initially, its mission implied only the exploration of Jupiter, Saturn, and their satellites. But the flight's trajectory presented the opportunity of flying by Uranus and Neptune as well. As soon as on July the 9th, 1979, Voyager 2 was 71,000 kilometers away from Jupiter. The probe also flew by its satellites Europa and Ganymede. The images received from the spacecraft gave grounds for putting forward the hypothesis of there being a liquid ocean under the crust of Europa. The observation of Ganymede showed that it was covered by a dirty ice crust. By the time 2 more years had elapsed, Voyager 2 was 101,000 kilometers away from Saturn. The probe flew by its satellites Tethys and Enceladus and transmitted detailed pictures of their surface. According to initial forecasts, that was supposed to be the end of its mission, but Voyager 2 continued on its course. January the 24th, 1986, the spacecraft approached Uranus and passed it at the distance of 81,000 kilometers. Voyager 2 sent a number of photos to the Earth. The planet's satellites, as well as its rings and surface, were to be seen in the pictures. It is thanks to them that 2 more Uranus's rings were discovered and the 9 already known ones were studied closer. 2 more years later, Voyager 2 found itself in the vicinity of the furthermost object of its mission and passed Neptune within 48,000 kilometers on August the 24th, 1989. It was able to take unique photographs of this giant and shoot Triton, its largest satellite. Active geysers were discovered on Triton, which came as a big surprise given the remote position and low temperature of this celestial body. Only 21 years after that did the probe cross the termination shock and entered the heliopause. 11 years on, and Voyager 2 passed through this area as well to come into interstellar space to stay. But what did the last planet seen by Voyager 2 look like? Many of you will certainly agree that Neptune rates as practically the most mysterious planet in the solar system. It is a body closest to Uranus in terms of its composition. It is perceived as a huge blue planet as a rule, and is even classified as an icy giant. Neptune's atmosphere is similar to that of Jupiter, and is mainly composed of hydrogen and helium. The planetary interior is for the most part made up of stone and ice. The color blue comes from methane in the outer layers of the atmosphere. Neptune's diameter earns it the 4th place among the other planets of the solar system, and it holds the 3rd place in terms of its mass. This planet is 17 times the size of the Earth. Neptune is also known for its dire climate. The strongest winds in the solar system blow in its atmosphere, and according to some estimates, their speed may reach 600 meters per second. A wind of this force would upend any object of average size landed on the planet's surface. The temperature on the surface of Neptune is close to minus 220 degrees Celsius. But if you were to find yourself there, the cold and fierce wind would not be the most trying ordeal. What is much scarier is that 1 year on Neptune would cost you 165 Earth years. Since the time Neptune was discovered in 1846, just over a year has passed on this planet. So, what could Voyager 2 see around that cheerless place? The first pictures taken by Voyager 2 as it was approaching Neptune were received on the 23rd of January 1989, when the probe was 310 million kilometers away from the planet. As the probe got closer, the images revealed formations in Neptune's atmosphere. These 3 images were received at a 90-minute interval. The photos allowed scientists to see atmospheric clouds, as well as notice a huge dark spot. The size of the spot was similar to the Great Red Spot on Jupiter. It should be noted that this area on Neptune was 10% darker than the atmosphere surrounding it. When Voyager 2 got closer still, it was able to see the planet in color. These photos were taken from the distance of 176 million kilometers. There was a 5-hour difference between them, during which time the planet had rotated 100 degrees. The probe's next objective was the closest satellites. On July 3rd, 1989, it was able to take a picture of Triton and capture both Triton and Neptune in one image. The probe kept getting closer and launched another active series of picture-taking 35 million kilometers away from Neptune to capture the nebulae for closer study. Apart from the great dark spot, a few dozens of similar formations were observed. In this contrasting image, Voyager 2 managed to capture thin and bright clouds. This picture made it clear that they floated much higher than the great dark spot. The next couple of photos was taken at a 17-hour interval, and it could be seen that the great dark spot completed the almost full turn around the planet. The scientists realized that spots like these are able to move around Neptune at the speed of 100 meters per second. The Voyager's images also made it possible to gauge the wind force, which in some areas reached as much as 700 meters per second, which is practically the sound speed. The closest distance of the probe's approach to the cloud layer of the planet made it 4,900 kilometers. The images depict cirrus clouds casting their shadows on the layer of continuous clouds underneath. During its flight, Voyager 2 was able to take pictures of several satellites, for example Triton and Nereid. Having done that, the probe continued on its course and bid its last farewell to the views of this planet. The last image taken by Voyager 2 near Neptune does indeed look like a goodbye. The probe had entered a shadow at the time. That is why just part of the icy giant can be seen. That was the end of their short acquaintance, and Voyager 2 left those parts, never to return again. Voyager 2 still remains the only spacecraft to have reached Uranus and Neptune. Its successful mission was outstripped only by that of the New Horizons probe, which reached Pluto in July 2015. Voyager 2, however, will always remain a legend of space exploration. In about 300 years, it will reach the Oort cloud and will sail beyond it only in 30,000 years. It is highly likely that by that time more than one exploration mission to Neptune will have been launched, but the achievements of Voyager 2 can truly be called a worthy beginning of this story.